The sea's a funny thing. Most days, it's your livelihood, your open road. You respect it, sure, because she can turn on you in a heartbeat, but you don't exactly fear it in your day to day. It's a known quantity, mostly. Other days, though, it feels like it's got a mind of its own, a dark, ancient consciousness that's actively trying to mess with your head to peel back the thin veneer of what you think is real and show you something else, something primal and unsettling. This was one of those days. We were out on the Sea Serpent, a name that sounded a lot tougher than the vessel herself. She was a rust bucket trawler, probably built before my granddad was born, groaning and creaking with every swell. We were maybe a good 100 miles off the coast, chasing a cod run that was proving elusive. On board were me, a bit younger then. Skip, our captain, a man whose face was a roadmap of storms. Old Finn, who could practically smell fish. And young Mikey, barely out of his teens. The fog rolled in without any warning, swift and silent, like a dirty gray curtain. 1 minute, weak sunlight. The next, we couldn't see the bow. This wasn't morning mist. This was thick, soupy stuff, swallowing sound, playing tricks on your eyes. It had a peculiar metallic, briny tang, almost chemical, that pricked the nostrils. Skip cursed under his breath and cut the engines to a dead crawl. The sudden quiet, with only the gentle lap of water against the hull, was unnerving, the silence pressing in, heavy and expectant. That's when Finn, on watch forward, huddled against the chill, spotted the first one. He didn't shout, just made a strangled noise. "Skip, you better come take a look. Port side, now." His voice was thin, laced with something I couldn't quite place. Awe or dread. Through a momentary swirling thin patch in the fog, maybe 50 yards off, there was a figure. Just standing there, on the water. Or what looked like the water because there was nothing else visible beneath it. Tall, impossibly dark against the lighter gray, and utterly, unnaturally motionless. It wasn't someone in a boat. There was no boat, no raft, no debris. Just there. A stark, silent sentinel, vaguely human but elongated, as if stretched. Then the fog, as if jealous of our glimpse, swirled back in with a vengeance, and the figure was gone. An icy drop in the air temperature accompanied its disappearance, a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean. "Probably just a log or some damn debris," Skip said, his voice a little too loud, a little too quick to dismiss it. He didn't meet our eyes, busying himself with the useless chart. None of us believed him. A log doesn't have that presence, doesn't make the air colder, doesn't make the back of your neck prickle. A little while later, maybe 10 minutes that felt like an hour, Mikey, fidgeting near the stern, let out a yelp. "There's another one! Back here! Look!" We rushed over. Same thing. A dark, still shape, briefly visible as the fog eddied. This one seemed closer, maybe 30 yards, and it felt like it was looking right at us. No features, no discernible details, just that chilling impression of focused, unwavering attention. This figure, too, was tall, unnaturally still, as if carved from the fog itself, or something far older than the sea. The silence around it was absolute. "Okay, this ain't right," Skip said, his voice grim, all pretense of nonchalance gone. He reached for the radio mic. Static, nothing but harsh, crackling static on every single channel. He tried the emergency frequency. Same deal. Our GPS, our guiding eye, was now just a blank, mocking screen. The compass in his binnacle was spinning lazily, drunkenly, utterly useless. Sabotage? Jamming from an unknown source? It felt deliberate, targeted. We were on our own. Blind, adrift in a gray void, and with the sickening, gut-wrenching certainty that we weren't alone out here. The silence from the radio was heavier than the fog, the silence of a trap slowly closing. Over the next hour, an eternity of dripping water, strained silence, and the frantic thumping of our own hearts. We saw more of them. Sometimes one, sometimes two or three at a time, appearing in different places around the boat, like a macabre, silent honor guard. Always silent, always still, always watching. They weren't fishermen in distress. They made no signal, no sound. They just were standing on the waves or on things we couldn't see beneath the churning gray surface. Low-profile craft, perhaps like those stealthy semi-submersibles drug runners sometimes used, or divers on some kind of individual. But their stillness was what got you. So absolute it was inhuman, and they seemed to be pushing us, hurting us. Every time Skip, relying on some deep-seated mariner's instinct, tried to turn the boat in what he thought was the direction of the coast, one of the figures would appear directly in our path. A silent, implacable barrier, forcing him to alter course to turn back into the deeper, more disorienting fog. Were they trying to keep us out of a certain area? A hidden cove? A clandestine rendezvous point? Or lead us into one for reasons we couldn't begin to fathom? Smugglers, maybe, or something more clandestine. A black ops military exercise using the fog for cover and not wanting any civilian witnesses. The way our electronics died, that wasn't natural weather interference. It felt targeted, precise. Mikey was starting to lose it completely, his bravado long gone. "They're ghosts," he kept saying, his voice cracking, tears streaming down his pale cheeks. "Ghosts of all the men lost at sea. They've come for us." He was clutching a small, tarnished, silver crucifix. "Stow it, kid, get a grip." Finn grumbled, his voice rougher than usual. But even he looked deeply spooked, his gaze constantly sweeping the fog line. He muttered something about old tales of wreckers on desolate coasts who used false lights to lure ships onto rocks. But this was different. No lights, just presence and an unnerving intelligence. I tried to rationalize to find a foothold for logic. Stealth boats. Some kind of experimental military exercise they don't want us seeing. But why the utter silence? Why the almost supernatural stillness? The way they just appeared and disappeared in the fog as if materializing from it. It felt less like advanced technology and more like something else. Something that didn't play by our rules of physics. The feeling of being watched was intense, oppressive, a physical pressure on my chest. The fog itself felt complicit, a knowing accomplice. The air grew colder, a damp, bone-chilling cold that seeped into our marrow. We were trapped. What would happen if we got too close? If they decided we'd seen too much, that we were a loose end, the implications were terrifying. Then, as suddenly and inexplicably as it had all begun, it started to end. The fog, which had been an unyielding wall, began to thin, to shred like rotten cloth. Patches of gray, choppy water appeared, then larger expanses. The figures became less distinct, their sharp edges blurring, fading back into the retreating mist like watercolor paintings left out in the rain. One by one, they vanished, reclaimed by the gray. As if their purpose, whatever it had been, was fulfilled, or perhaps they were merely retreating with their native element. Our radio crackled back to life, spitting out a garbled, tinny weather report from some distant, normal station that sounded like it was broadcasting from another planet. The GPS flickered on, its screen blinking erratically for a moment before finally settling, showing us miles, many miles, off our intended course, near a desolate, rocky stretch of coastline known for strange magnetic anomalies. And persistent, unsettling whispers of unexplained disappearances. Had they just been ensuring we passed through or stayed well away from whatever operation they were running in that hidden zone? Or Had we stumbled into something far older? Something that used the fog as its hunting ground, its cloak? We didn't talk much on the way back to port. The chug of the sea serpent's old engine a comforting, normal sound. What was there to say? We'd seen something we couldn't explain, something that felt both humanly menacing in its calculated actions and yet not quite human in its execution. We tacitly agreed, without ever speaking the words, to just not talk about it. Who would believe a bunch of fishermen talking about silent watchers, dead electronics, and being herded like sheep? They'd call us drunk, or mad, or worse, liars. Our livelihoods depended on a certain level of credibility that I know when I saw. We all do. Those weren't just logs or tricks of the light. They were real, and they were in control. Whether they were men with advanced silent technology engaged in something illegal or secret, or something the sea coughed up from its deepest, darkest, forgotten parts, I don't know. But they were a warning. Some parts of the ocean, especially when the fog rolls in like a shroud, are best left undisturbed. And sometimes you're not the hunter out there. You're the one being watched, the one being assessed, and maybe, just maybe, allowed to leave. That thought that we were allowed to leave, that our fate was not in our own hands, is what chills me most, even now, years later. It makes me wonder what they would have done if we hadn't turned when they wanted us to. It was supposed to be a leisurely sail, a much-needed escape from the city grind. Just me and my old college buddy, Dave. A week up the coast. Exploring little coves, maybe some fishing, definitely some beer, leaving deadlines and traffic far behind. Dave had inherited this small but sturdy sailboat. The Wanderer, from his seafaring uncle, and he was keen to get some sea miles under its keel. We were a few days out. The weather had been postcard perfect, all sunshine and gentle breezes. Life was good. Then this fog bank appeared on the horizon. It didn't roll in. It advanced like a solid gray wall, an invading army of mist. We tried to skirt it, but it moved with unnatural speed, swallowing us whole in minutes. The world shrank to a suffocating circle of maybe 30 feet. The wind died. The silence was absolute eerie. This wasn't normal fog. This stuff felt heavy, almost greasy, clinging to everything, muffling even the sound of our own breathing. Dave was at the tiller, his usual cheerful face etched with tension, his knuckles white. I was below, trying the GPS, but the coordinates were jumping around erratically, making no sense. That's why I saw it. I'd come back on deck, squinting into the oppressive gray, the dampness seeping into my clothes. Through a slightly thinner patch of mist, a momentary window off the port bow, there was a shape. A human silhouette, distinctly so. Standing on something low in the water, a half-submerged kayak, maybe, or a piece of dark, splintered wreckage. It was too far to make out details, just this dark, lonely outline against the shifting gray. And it looked like it was waving. Not a frantic, desperate wave of distress, but a slow, deliberate, almost languid beckoning. An arm rising and falling with a strange, hypnotic rhythm. "Dave, you see that?" I asked, my voice sounding strangely loud in the stillness, pointing. He squinted, his eyes narrowed. "See what?" "Jesus, I can barely see the bow. Think the fog's getting to you, man. There's nothing out there but more of this damn soup." He sounded irritated. I looked again, harder. It was still there, unmistakably, definitely waving. No. Seriously, Dave, someone's out there. I can see them. Looks like they're in trouble, stranded on something. The image of a lone survivor, clinging to hope, flashed through my mind. The duty to assist. Dave was still deeply skeptical. Could be a reflection, a trick of the light on the fog. We're not near any charted rocks or known hazards out here. But I couldn't shake the image. The figure looked so solitary, so utterly isolated. And the way it waved, it felt directed right at me. A personal, silent invitation. A weird kind of pull, a dangerous cocktail of pity, and an almost morbid, irresistible curiosity started to tug at me. "We should check it out," I said, my voice more insistent. "What if it's someone who really needs help? We can't just sail past." Reluctantly, after a moment of staring into the gray himself, Dave agreed. He wouldn't want to leave someone stranded, even if he thought I was seeing things. All right, he grumbled. "But if it's a bloody seal on a rock, you're buying the beers for a month." We altered course, the Wanderer ghosting slowly towards where I'd seen the silhouette, the auxiliary engine a muted throb. As we got closer, the fog seemed to play tricks, toying with us. The figure would disappear for long moments, then reappear, sometimes looking closer, sometimes further away. It was maddening. Dave still couldn't see it clearly, muttering about optical illusions, but I saw it. Each time it reappeared, that same slow, rhythmic, beckoning wave, like a silent metronome. The area we were sailing into felt increasingly wrong. The water, which had been choppy gray, was unusually still here, almost oily, with a strange iridescent sheen on its surface, like a chemical spill. Odd bits of debris floated around, waterlogged wood that didn't look like driftwood, dark and strangely shaped. Unidentifiable scraps of dark, leathery material. And patches of a pale, fibrous, stringy substance I didn't recognize clinging to the surface like grotesque cobwebs. And then there was the smell. Faint at first, then stronger, more pervasive. A sickly sweet, cloying, rotten kind of smell, like overripe fruit and something else. Something vaguely chemical and deeply unpleasant that caught at the back of your throat. Had a ship carrying some hazardous cargo gone down here? That could explain the debris, the smell, the oily water. "I don't like this, man," Dave said, his voice low and tight, his earlier skepticism replaced by a very real unease. He wrinkled his nose. "This place stinks, literally, and my gut's screaming at me. This isn't right. Let's get out of here." But I was fixated on that silhouette, almost mesmerized. It seemed so close now. Was it a person in a survival suit, their features obscured by the hood and the mist? Or just something that looked like one from a distance, a cruel trick of debris and fog? The way it moved, or rather didn't move beyond that wave, was just off, unnatural. "Just a little further," I urged, my voice a hoarse whisper, though a cold knot of dread was tightening in my own stomach. Then the silhouette did something different. It stopped its rhythmic, hypnotic waving and just pointed. Its arm, a dark, thin line against the gray, extended, pointing with an unwavering finger towards a particularly dense, almost black patch of fog just beyond it. A spot where the gray seemed to congeal into something solid and menacing. And that's when Dave saw it too. Or something that finally registered as undeniably, terrifyingly real. He let out a choked, strangled gasp, his hand flying to his mouth. What is that?" He stammered, his voice cracking. It's not right." "Oh God, it's not right." His face, normally ruddy, was ashen. I looked, my gaze following that silent pointing arm. The silhouette was still there, a dark finger of accusation or invitation. But now, behind it, in that blacker, denser patch of fog, I could see shapes, vague at first, then coalescing, shifting, monstrous shapes, too many of them. and they weren't human. They were long, distorted with too many angles, too many limbs, or perhaps no limbs at all, just pulsing amorphous masses, moving with a slow, ponderous, utterly unnatural grace. Were they real? Or was the air here tainted by whatever had spilled from that hypothetical wreck? That chemical smell, was it a hallucinogen? Some kind of toxic spill could certainly make you see things, make the water look strange, attract scavengers. And if there was a wreck, maybe the beckoning figure was a survivor, delirious from exposure or fumes, not knowing they were leading us into more danger, the very hazard that got them. Or maybe, more chillingly, they weren't a survivor at all, but part of the hazard itself, a human lure. The monstrous shapes could have been the distorted outlines of a mostly submerged, tangled wreck. Its broken spars and rigging looking like limbs in the deceptive fog or perhaps unusual large deep sea. Marine life scavengers attracted to whatever had spilled or sunk. The fog would warp anything, play with scale and form. Fear, cold and sharp and absolute, sliced through my morbid obsession. This wasn't a rescue. It was a trap, or a madman's delusion, or a toxic nightmare. Turn around. I yelled, my voice finally finding its strength. Dave, get us out of here. Now. Full throttle. Dave didn't need telling twice. He spun the tiller so hard the old wood groaned. The Wanderer heeled over, protesting, and we started to claw our way back, away from that silently pointing silhouette and the unimaginable horrors it guarded or represented. Every ripple in the water, every swirl of fog, seemed to hide another threat. As we fled, hearts hammering, I risked one last look back. The silhouette was still there, motionless now, watching. And for a terrifying, stomach-churning instant, I thought I saw its head turn, very slowly, very deliberately, following our escape. Then the fog, thick and merciful, or perhaps just biding its time, swirled between us, and it was gone. We didn't stop, didn't speak until we were miles away, until the fog finally began to break and we saw the clear, open ocean again. The sun, a welcome, sanity-restoring sight. We never spoke of what we saw or almost saw that day. Not to each other, not to anyone. There were no words for it. What could we say? That we'd been lured by a possible madman or a hallucination towards what might have been a toxic waste site or a field of grotesque debris that made us see monsters? Or that we'd encountered something truly inexplicable, something the ocean briefly, terrifyingly, revealed. I still dream about it. That lonely figure. Was it a victim or a perpetrator? Was the horror we glimpsed objectively real or entirely in our heads, triggered by something real but misunderstood in the disorienting fog and poisonous air? The ambiguity is what haunts me most. The not knowing if we fled a shared hallucination, a dangerous human, or something far worse that the ocean, in its mystery, briefly allowed us to see. That chemical smell. I sometimes think I can still taste it, a phantom reminder of the day the sea almost claimed us. I sold my share of the Wanderer to Dave as soon as we got back to port. I haven't been on a sailboat since. The open ocean, once a symbol of freedom and adventure for me, now just reminds me of that beckoning hand and the suffocating darkness that lay beyond. They call it Despair Shoal for a reason, and it's a name well earned, whispered and hushed. Fearful tones in the smoky, dimly lit dockside bars where old sailors trade tailies darker than the cheap rum they drink. It's a nasty, treacherous, godforsaken stretch of half-submerged, razor-sharp black rocks and unpredictable, swirling boat-grabbing currents located miles from any recognized. Shipping lanes almost always wrapped in a thick, clinging, unnervingly silent fog that seems to generate its own unnatural bone-deep chill. Legend among the local fishermen, the kind of grim cautionary tales you hear late at night when the rum is flowing freely and the wind is howling like a banshee outside. Has it that more ships have been lost there over the centuries than anyone can count. Their stout timbers ground to splinters on the jagged, unforgiving teeth of the shoal. Their crews vanished without a trace, swallowed whole by the hungry sea and the concealing mist. We weren't treasure hunters, not exactly, though the thought of finding something uniquely valuable, historically priceless, wasn't entirely absent from our more fanciful, less scientific daydreams. We were a small, dedicated, and usually rational team of marine archaeologists. Me, Jack, more of a tech guy, good with the remote sensing gear, the sonar interpretation, and the ROV piloting. Dr. Uria, a seasoned, respected pro with decades of field experience and healthy, often vocal, and sometimes infuriating skepticism for fanciful sea stories and local superstitions. And two bright, eager, slightly naive grad students, Lena and Ben, still full of wide-eyed academic enthusiasm and a touch too much faith in textbooks over the harsh, unpredictable reality of the ocean. We were there on the edge of Despair Shoal to survey a recently reported anomaly on the detailed satellite. Sonar chart something large and metallic, possibly a very old, historically significant wreck perhaps. Even a lost Spanish galleon laden with treasure, the kind of once-in-a-lifetime find that makes a career and rewrites history books. Or so we hoped. Our boat, the Pathfinder, was small but robust, a converted North Sea trawler, well equipped for its size, crammed to the gunwales with sensitive sonar arrays, magnetometers, side scan units, and a small, agile, bright yellow ROV we affectionately called Finn. We anchored what Aris, after much careful calculation and muttering over charts, deemed a safe distance from the main visible cluster of black. Glistening rocks as the inevitable, dreaded fog rolled in. It came silently, insidiously, like a gray shroud being drawn over the world, turning the choppy sea and the bruised sky into a uniform, featureless palette of grays. Visibility dropped to a few feet in minutes. The only sounds were the drip of condensation from our rigging and the mournful sigh of water around the hull and against the unseen rocks. The air grew heavy, damp, and unnaturally cold. Perfect conditions for a ghost story, eh? Ben said, trying to lighten the mood with a nervous chuckle, but his voice was shaky. Aris grunted, already hunched over his sonar console. Less storytelling, more science. Let's get the remote sonar deployed. As we worked, Lena, at a porthole, gasped. What was that? Near those big rocks, like a person. We looked. Nothing but fog. Probably just a rock formation, Lena, Aris said impatiently. This place is notorious for playing tricks on your eyes. But a little later, as I was securing a line on deck, I saw it too. A shape, vaguely human, standing on one of the weed-slicked rocks. It was there for a heartbeat, then gone, as if it had melted back into the fog or the rock itself. I said nothing immediately, not wanting to earn Aris's scorn. The sonar started acting up almost immediately. Strange, incoherent readings, ghost signals flickering across the screen, areas of inexplicable interference. Aris was getting visibly frustrated. This damn fog must be causing some kind of severe atmospheric or electrical interference, he muttered. It was a plausible explanation. Some shoals, particularly those with volcanic origins or unusual geological compositions, are known for strong magnetic anomalies that can wreck electronics. Or perhaps there were unusual gas seeps in the area. Methane hydrate deposits can exist in such environments, and if disturbed by currents or seismic activity, could release gas that might affect sensitive equipment More disturbingly, human perception if the concentration in the air became high enough. That could explain a lot. Then Ben on deck yelled, "Hey, Dr. Thorne? There's someone out here." On the rocks, they're waving, several of them. We rushed out, and there they were, several figures, standing on different parts of the shoal, some on rocks barely above the waterline. Others seeming to hover just above the churning foam where no rock could be. They were indistinct, their forms shifting, wavering in the dense fog, like heat haze but cold. Sometimes they looked like people, draped in what might have been tattered, dark clothing or seaweed. Other times they seemed more elemental, like pillars of mist given vaguely human form, and they were all slowly, silently, waving at us, or more accurately, beckoning. "They can't be real," Lena whispered, her voice trembling, gripping my arm. "Coast Guard?" Ben stammered, looking at Aris. Aris stared, his usual composure gone, his face a mask of stunned disbelief and dawning horror. "No. Signal," he croaked. All communications were dead. That magnetic anomaly theory, or gas affecting the electronics, seemed more plausible and more chilling by the minute. The figures on the shoal didn't move closer. They just stood there, shifting, watching, their silent beckoning more menacing than any shout. The silence from them was terrifying. Then one of the shape, one that was closer to us, seemed to change more dramatically, its silhouette elongated, twisted. For a horrifying moment, it looked exactly like the broken, jagged mast of an old sailing ship jutting up from the water. Then it shifted again, becoming more humanoid, but with something hideously wrong about its outline, as if it were made of amalgamated wreckage and something else. If it was gas affecting our perceptions, were we all hallucinating these specific evolving forms? The power of suggestion, combined with a genuinely hazardous environment and the eerie reputation of the shoal, could easily lead to shared, distorted perceptions. The shifting shapes could be our brains trying to make sense of vague forms in the fog, influenced by the stories of wrecks and our own mounting fears of what might be hidden in the waters below. The human mind abhors a vacuum. It will create patterns, even monstrous ones, from chaos. They're not people. I managed to say my throat dry. They're the shoal, or what the shoal has taken. The wrecks, the drowned. The Pathfinder suddenly lurched violently, a jarring shudder running through her hull. An anchor line snapped with a sound like a rifle shot. We were drifting inexorably towards the rocks, towards the waiting, shifting shapes. Panic erupted. Aris was yelling orders, his voice cracking, but still authoritative. Ben and Lena were scrambling, fumbling with the controls for the auxiliary engine. It coughed, sputtered black smoke, then died with a final, wheezing gasp. The fog seemed to press in, thicker now, more malevolent, and the shapes on the rocks, the watchers, seemed to be clear, more defined, more eager, and they weren't beckoning anymore. They were just waiting, patiently, hungrily. I don't know how we got out of there. It's a blur of primal fear, frantic effort, and sheer, dumb luck. Ares, with adrenaline-fueled strength, managed to get the small, temperamental, outboard metal we used for the inflatable dinghy going. It was pathetically underpowered for a boat the size of the Pathfinder, but it was something, a fragile hope. We steered away from the main cluster of rocks, away from those silent, watching figures, the little engines screaming in protest. We scraped hull on unseen rocks more than once, the sound of tortured, screeching metal setting our teeth on edge, each impact a fresh wave of terror. The fog clung to us for what felt like an eternity, a relentless pursuer. Every shadow, every ripple on the water looked like another horror. When we finally broke free, hours later, into clear water and weak sunlight, we were exhausted, soaked, terrified, and miles off course, the Pathfinder battered and leaking, but miraculously still afloat. We never filed a full, truthful report on what happened at Despair Shoal. Eris just officially stated that extreme and unpredictable geological and atmospheric conditions made the area too hazardous for further survey work, and that equipment malfunctioned catastrophically due to these unforeseen environmental factors. What else could we say? That we'd seen gas-induced hallucinations that looked like the ghosts of drowned sailors? That the shoal's grim reputation was so potent it made us collectively see our deepest fears. They'd have revoked his academic credentials. I still see them in my nightmares. Those shifting shapes in the fog? Were they truly just tricks of light and gas and fear-fueled imagination? Or does a place like Despair Shoal, so soaked in tragedy and loss, develop its own way of warning people off? Or luring them in to join its silent, sunken congregation? The reason for the phenomena might be explainable through unusual natural occurrences, magnetic fields, gas seeps, complex fog optics, but the experience felt malevolent, purposeful, almost sentient. That's the part science doesn't quite cover. The why, it felt like it was toying with us, enjoying our terror. That lingering mystery, the hint of an almost geological sentience or a deeply imprinted psychic residue, is what makes Despair Shoal a place I'll never forget or willingly revisit. Is a place best left to its grim reputation and the countless bones it cradles in a cold, dark deep.